If you were 2 days ahead of others in learning that the end of the world was about to arrive, what would you plan to do? Would you hoard various supplies, return to your rural hometown, or start building a dry toilet and carry out a home-based infrastructure project? Would you construct defensive fortifications or develop rooftop agricultural production? In short, you should truly achieve self-sufficiency. Stay indoors and fully enjoy the lying flat life in the doomsday scenario. Pingin. Hurry up and flee from here. No, you mustn't go out. You have to wait for me to come home. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I received 2 WeChat messages from my boyfriend, Jiang Shun. At that moment, my heart sank suddenly, and an ominous premonition quickly spread throughout my body. Jiang Shun graduated from a medical major, and now works as a doctor in a renowned top 3 hospital in this city. He has been attending a seminar in City A for the past week. He has always been young and promising, and acts in a steady manner under normal circumstances. He would never send such text messages without any reason, and with vague content. This is completely inconsistent with his usual way of doing things. I immediately called him, but no one answered the phone. At this time, I had no more drowsiness left. I simply sat on the sofa and quietly waited for the dawn, hoping that he would return safely. As expected, at 5 o'clock in the morning, Jiang Shun rushed back looking extremely exhausted. At the same time, he also brought a terrible piece of news. Like a bolt from the blue, the 0 case of the zombie virus had actually been discovered in City A. What's even worse is that most of the hospitals that participated in the seminar had already fallen. Although the hospital authorities contacted professional personnel for lockdown at the first moment, the situation was still extremely critical. How could it have come to this? I was still in a state of shock and suddenly slumped down on the sofa. Jiang Shun tightly grasped my hand, as if trying to transfer some strength to me who was now limp and weak. Pingin, if the situation is really as bad as I expected, those monsters will only need 3 days to reach here from City A. Pingin, we only have 3 days left. Jiang Shun also seemed to be overwhelmed by this sudden fright. There are still 3 days, Pingin, the end of the world is coming. Years of professional training enabled Jiang Shun to quickly calm down after a brief moment of panic. We only spent 5 minutes sorting out the possible development trends of the incident. And we immediately determined the first thing we had to do: hoard supplies. If the zombie disaster is inevitable, then we must try every means to survive in this apocalyptic world. And supplies are undoubtedly the fundamental guarantee for survival. Jiang Shun's parents unfortunately passed away in a car accident 3 years ago. Apart from some distant uncles, he doesn't have many relatives. My parents are still alive, but after they retired from the research institute, they have moved back to their rural hometown to enjoy their retirement, and are currently not in this city. Now we are faced with 2 choices: either we bring our parents here, or we go to the countryside with our supplies. Go to the countryside. Jiang Shun and I both said this decision simultaneously. In the situation of extreme shortage of supplies, the countryside has fields and land, and the hope of survival is somewhat higher than in the steel jungle constructed by reinforced concrete. Moreover, the countryside is relatively sparsely populated, and the probability of being attacked by zombies is also lower. At this moment, Jiang Shun's and my minds were like 2 rapidly spinning tops, operating at a high speed. He tore a piece of paper from the notebook and listed down all the things we needed to do, and the supplies we needed to hoard one by one. In the early morning, a faint light had started to appear on the horizon. I packed all the necessary luggage at home and moved it to the car. Jiang Shun immediately contacted a car rental company and rented a freight truck specifically for loading supplies. There were already a few pedestrians on the road, and the major supermarkets and stores hadn't opened yet. Jiang Shun and I decided to go to the vegetable wholesale market to purchase goods first, since vegetables have a very short storage time. We tried our best to select those vegetables that were resistant to storage. We almost cleared out all the vegetable stalls after roughly counting the goods. We had bags of potatoes, bags of sweet potatoes, bags of cabbages, bags of corn, bags of yams, and bags of radishes. These root vegetables are relatively durable and not easy to deteriorate, and we only packed a small amount of each of those vegetables that are not easy to store. Staple foods were the main objects of our purchase. In order to save time, Jiang Shun and I took separate actions. He went to hoard rice, flour, cooking oil, eggs, frozen pork, beef, mutton, chicken drumsticks, chicken feet, chicken wings, and various types of seafood. And I headed straight for our pharmacy and stocked up on all the medications for common diseases within a short period of time. I bought cold medicine, antipyretics, vitamins, disinfectant alcohol, iodine tincture, bandages, cotton swabs, thermometers, anti-inflammatory drugs, antihypertensive drugs, and quick-acting heart-rescuing pills. When I came back from the pharmacy, Jiang Shun was already loading things onto the car. Although the quantity of the things we bought was huge, this was a rather common situation in the wholesale market, so our actions didn't arouse anyone's suspicion. Taking advantage of the time when he was loading the goods, I went back to the wholesale market and directly went to the store selling vegetable seeds. Looking at the dazzling array of seed packages in front of me, I was at a loss. Having grown up in the city since childhood, I really have no talent for growing vegetables. In order to save time, I took 3 packages of each kind of seed on the shelf, not missing a single one, and packed them all and took them away. It is of vital importance to maintain the ability of continuous reproduction all the time, no matter how long this disaster will last. When passing by the store selling eggs, I made a reservation with the boss for 5 cases of eggs I roughly counted, and each case probably had 6 boxes, and each box had 30 eggs. These eggs are estimated to be able to sustain our life for a certain period of time, ensuring both carbohydrates and proteins. Now we still need natural vitamins. Junction immediately understood what I was thinking, so we went back and carried 3 cases of apples, 2 cases of lemons, and 3 cases of pomegranates. Fruits like grapes and peaches are prone to deterioration, so we didn't buy them after all the goods were loaded onto the car. They almost occupied half of the space of the freight truck. I had always thought that Lin Jingzhou loved me. It was not until the end of the world arrived and money lost its use that I realized he had always been eyeing the money in my family. What was most nauseating was that there had always been a white moonlight in his heart in my previous life. The white moonlight fled to his home. He felt so distressed that he would rather eat less himself to save food for the white moonlight. In the end, at the white moonlight's pleading, he agreed to sacrifice me since their love was so touching. Then I would bring them together. Earlier I came to the residence of the white moonlight, Su Qingru, a very remote alley. The curses of a man and the cries of a woman intermingled, forming a vulgar farce. Suddenly, a woman in revealing clothes ran out of the room in a sorry state and bumped into me. She glared at me and muttered curses. "Are you blind?" I took the opportunity to show Lin Jingzhou's photo, and then picked it up in slow motion. The woman snatched the photo, and her eyes fell on the expensive watch on Lin Jingzhou's wrist. I tried to pull the photo back and said indignantly, "What are you looking at my boyfriend for? We're getting married soon." Su Qingru immediately said enthusiastically, "Sister, your boyfriend looks so rich." I said, "Of course my boyfriend owns a company." Su Qingru's eyes immediately changed. Revealing a greedy light, she pretended to invite me to dinner to apologize. But during the meal, she kept probing about Lin Jingzhou's situation. I also pretended not to see her intentions, and told her everything in detail about what Lin Jingzhou liked. When she heard that Lin Jingzhou couldn't forget his white moonlight, Su Qingru's face almost split into a grin. When we parted, Su Qingru asked casually, "When are you guys planning to get married?" "In a week." A week later, the zombies would break out. "So Su Qingru, you'd better hurry up, otherwise it would be a shame for me to have come all the way here to provide you with this information." Ever since I said that my dad intended to give the company to Lin Jingzhou had become extremely attentive and generous. To Meihei asked me out several times a day, and never let me pay for meals, saying it was his duty. Why didn't he think it was his duty before? Wasn't it just to please me? But I wouldn't let him have an easy time. "This food tastes terrible. How did you choose this place?" I asked Lin Jingzhou angrily. Lin Jingzhou's face turned extremely ugly, but for the sake of the company, he endured and didn't dare to get angry. Instead, he had to fawn on me and say he was wrong. I felt extremely pleased, although the hatred from my previous life couldn't be settled immediately. Making him embarrassed could slightly ease my hatred. After finally finishing the meal, Lin Jingzhou asked me anxiously about the progress of the company transfer procedures. I gave him a sidelong glance and said slowly, "Didn't my dad say that once we get the marriage certificate, the company will be transferred?" Lin Jingzhou seemed a bit anxious. "Chiyu, can we transfer the company first, and then get the marriage certificate? My mom said it would be better that way as their daughter-in-law. You should also consider the old people's thoughts." As he was speaking, a call came in. Lin Jingzhou looked at it, and immediately hung up guiltily. I glanced at the phone number. There was no doubt that it was Su Qingru's number. Su Qingru was really fast. In just 2 days, she had made Lin Jingzhou give up the idea of getting a marriage certificate with me. "I'm not Fengshen. What if you don't get the marriage certificate with me after the company is transferred?" I said leisurely. Lin Jingzhou was hit right in the heart by my words, and his face turned pale. Suddenly he gave an awkward smile. "How could that be? I love you so much. Besides, my mom said she has recognized you. She won't accept anyone else." Lin Jingzhou brought his mom into the conversation. When I heard about his mom, I almost couldn't hold back my fake smile. His mom recognized me? That was simply a huge joke. In my previous life, when I went to his home for the first meal, his mom only made a cabbage soup and a plate of stir-fried green sand at the dinner table. She was extremely sarcastic, making it clear in every word that I wasn't good enough for her, so he couldn't eat. When I got up in the middle of the night, I found that his mom had made a big table of sumptuous dishes and was urging Lin Jingzhou to eat quickly and not let me see. I was so angry that I bought the earliest train ticket for the next day, but I didn't expect the zombie outbreak to be so sudden. During the time I was trapped in Lin Jingzhou's home, his mom ordered me around all day and treated me worse than a servant. In fact, a large part of the reason why I chose not to break up with Lin Jingzhou was also because of his mom. If I completely broke up with him, how could I have the chance to make his mom taste the pain I once endured? But I haven't met your mom yet. How do I know if what you said is true or not? Lin Jingzhou immediately said upon hearing this. Then I'll take you to meet her. Why should I go to her place? I don't want to leave. The thought of me going to meet her at her place? Don't even think about it. Lin Jingzhou's face almost distorted. And finally he compromised and said, then I'll ask her to come and meet you. Is that okay? I nodded and smiled. I really want to see if your mom is really good to me. If she is really good to me, then I'll agree to your request. A big smile immediately appeared on Lin Jingzhou's face, and he quickly said, then I'll ask her to come to see you tomorrow. I smiled. This was exactly what I had been longing for in my previous life. She bullied me because I was alone and treated me worse than a dog this life. I'll also let you taste that feeling. After the meal, Lin Jingzhou also wanted to go home with me. But I refused. My home has now been decorated by my parents like an ironclad fortress. If Lin Jingzhou saw it, he would inevitably be suspicious. I returned home, and the house had become like a small supermarket. There were mountains of various foods, enough to last for several years. My dad was panting as he installed the iron bars with the density and thickness he installed. Not to mention zombies, even bullets would have a hard time penetrating. My mom came up to me. How did it go? Lin Jingzhou has already gotten together with Su Qingru. His mom is coming to see me tomorrow. After I finished speaking, my mom clapped her hands and said happily, good, Qiyue, don't be soft. Hearted. She dared to treat you like that in the previous life. This life, you must make her pay for it to relieve your anger. I had told my parents about my life after the end of the world, and they strongly supported me in taking the opportunity to retaliate severely. I grew up under my parents' love all my life. I never expected to suffer so much. In the end, my parents were both angry and Shin-tung. In fact, if I hadn't insisted on taking revenge myself, with my mom's hot temper, she would have rushed over and fought with Lin Jingzhou's family directly. I tell you, don't worry about things at home. Your task is to avenge your grudges. And when the end of the world arrives, our family will close the door and live our lives. After listening to my mom's words, I nodded happily. At this time, my phone rang. It was a text message from Lin Jingzhou's sister. Lin Xingyu's sister-in-law, can you lend me some money? I sneered. If she hadn't sent the message, I would almost have forgotten about her. This murderer, who indirectly caused my death. Lin Xingyu was in high school. Although her grades were not good, she was very eloquent and often coaxed me into a good mood, so I doted on her very much. Lin Jingzhou was stingy and poor, so most of her pocket money came from me. Since I didn't have a sister, I always treated her like a real sister. But later I found out that Lin Xingyu didn't regard me as a family member at all. Her sweet words were just to get money from me. On the surface, she called me sister-in-law, but in fact, she treated me like a fool and often taunted me in front of her classmates and praised her brother. She was more proficient than anyone else in stepping on one to boost the other in the previous life. When she saw that I had no more use value, she immediately called Su Qingru sister-in-law. The intimacy made people want to vomit, and the most hateful thing was that if it wasn't for her insistence that someone would come to rescue them, giving her whole family hope, her family wouldn't have had the idea of eating me. She was so certain that someone would come to rescue them. Seemingly because of what the boy she had a crush on said. She liked that boy so much that she even thought about how many children they would have in the future. To destroy a person is better than to break their heart. Since she liked that boy so much, then I would completely shatter her hope. I really wanted to see if she was certain that no one would go to rescue her, she would still be as happy and full of expectation every day as she was in the previous life. I'll come to see you tomorrow and give you the money in person. Soon a message came back. Okay, thank you, sister-in-law. You're so kind. You and my brother are a match made in heaven. I curled my lips into a sarcastic smile. The next day, I went to the school to find Lin Xingyu. I chose the time of the break for exercises. Lin Xingyu happily ran towards me, but her eyes unconsciously fixed on my chabal. Full of envy and jealousy, I remembered that in the previous life, when she saw that I couldn't escape, she couldn't wait to snatch my bag and scolded me for not being worthy of carrying such an expensive bag. Is there a boy you like in your class? Lin Xingyu blushed, and her eyes quickly drifted towards a teenager at the end of the line. I looked in the direction she was looking. He was good looking, but he looked very young. I made an excuse to send Lin Xingyu away, and then walked up to him. Little brother, how old are you? The teenager looked at me and said, just turned 16. He was still a minor. He had originally thought of making this kid like me and abandon Lin Xingyu. We must never get involved with minors. Perhaps seeing that I was too jujia, the teenager actually smiled and said, sister, I have an older brother's 25 this year, and is in the army. He doesn't have a girlfriend and isn't married. My mind must have been addled because I actually replied to him, then I'll be your sister-in-law in the future. Anyway, in a few days, it would be the end of the world, and he wouldn't have time to settle accounts with meth. Teenager smiled even more brightly. I unconsciously gained some confidence and said, since I'm your sister-in-law, listen to your sister-in-law. Don't like Lin Xingyu, and don't say anything about going to find her or the like. I thought for a while and added, oh, by the way, try to stock up on as much food as possible at home these days. Don't go out in 4 days. Being a saint in the end of the world scenario is the most fatale. Can only remind him to this extent. The teenager looked at me thoughtfully for a while, and then nodded solemnly. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lin Xingyu running over panting. She was probably in a hurry to ask me for money. I turned around and left. I wasn't going to be a fool and give her money. Just as I walked out of the school gate, Lin Jingzhou sent a message saying that his mom had arrived and asked me to pick her up. Looking at the nearly degree sun, I immediately replied, no, I'm not available. Lin Jingzhou was currently trying his best to please me, so upon hearing this, he didn't dare to get angry, and had to go pick up his mom himself. Then can you book a restaurant? My mom came early in the morning and hasn't eaten yet. After hearing Lin Jingzhou's words, I smiled. Eating? That was great. I was just worrying about not finding a way to deal with his mom. Okay, I'll send you the address later. I guarantee you'll be satisfied. Lin Jingzhou was overjoyed. Immediately I heard him say to his mom on the other end that they would have a big meal soon. His mom snorted. She can't even serve her future mother-in-law well. She's definitely not a good daughter-in-law. Her voice was not low. Lin Jingzhou gave an awkward laugh, and quickly explained that his mom was too tired, so she had a bad temper. I smiled, and said it was okay anyway. Later they would find out that my temper was even worse. I went to the restaurant where my mom had a steak and directly booked a large private room, but when the waiter asked me what dishes I wanted to prepare, I only ordered 2 dishes. One was a cabbage soup, and the other was stir-fried greens. Moreover, I explicitly stated that it didn't need to be too delicious, and it could be prepared similar to what is given to a dog. Shortly after the dishes were served, Lin Jingzhou arrived with his mother, Hitsuefan. Lin Jingzhou glanced at the dishes on the table and furrowed his brows, saying, "The service at this restaurant is subpar. Why haven't they cleared away the leftovers from the previous diners?" Hitsuefan also cast a disdainful glance at the dishes and said, "I wonder what kind of person would eat such meager fare. I usually make this kind of food for the dog." I feigned surprise, covering my mouth, and said to Hitsuefan, "These were specially ordered for you." Hitsuefan was immediately stunned after realizing what was happening. She flew into a rage and said in a trembling voice, "What on earth are you thinking? How dare you serve me such food, you vicious woman?" I pinched my thigh hard, forcing out a few tears, and pretended to be wronged, saying, "You don't understand. The food in restaurants has too much grease, and isn't safe. Besides, considering your age, eating something light is good for your health." This was exactly what Hitsuefan had said to me in my previous life when I was feeling wronged and angry. Hitsuefan was so angry that she was speechless and cursed. "You're talking nonsense." I suddenly stood up and shouted, "I see that you're just not satisfied with me painstakingly prepared a nutritious meal for you, and yet you still scold me. A marriage without the blessings of elders is not a happy one. In that case, it's better for me and Lin Jingzhou to break up." With that, I picked up my bag and was about to run out. Both Hitsuefan and Lin Jingzhou were startled by me. Lin Jingzhou quickly grabbed me and coaxed me, saying, "Chiyu, Mom was just joking with you. My mom likes you so much, and of course she likes the dishes you ordered." Then he anxiously looked at Hitsuefan, constantly giving her meaningful glances. Hitsuefan glared at me resentfully, but still suppressed her dissatisfaction and reluctantly smiled, saying, "Lin Jingzhou is right. I'm satisfied. I've been trying to maintain a healthy lifestyle recently, and I really can't eat too much greasy food." Only then did I dry my tears and slowly sit down. Pointing to the greens, I said, "Then eat up. Remember to finish everything." Hitsuefan could only sit down just like I had in my previous life. After a long journey and being extremely hungry, she could only eat a plate of greens during the meal. I went to the restroom. When I came back, I happened to overhear the two of them whispering. Hitsuefan asked Lin Jingzhou resentfully when he could finally get his hands on my family's company. Lin Jingzhou also felt sorry for his mother, and a venomous glint appeared in his eyes. "Mom, don't worry. Once I get the company, you can scold her as much as you want. Then hurry up. Just looking at this little slut makes me want to slap her." Chingru came to see me yesterday and bought me a lot of beautiful clothes. I really want her to be my daughter-in-law. I smiled coldly. In my previous life, Su Qingru had also given Hitsuefan a bunch of clothes, which were all cheap items randomly picked up from street stalls. The total value of all those clothes was less than a fraction of the one I gave her, but his mother was so ignorant at the mention of Su Qingru's name. A gentle glint also appeared in Lin Jingzhou's eyes, and his face was rarely tender. "Once I have money, I can marry her in style." I deliberately stepped heavier. The two in the private room quickly composed their expressions. Lin Jingzhou pushed his chair aside to help me and said gently, "Be careful. The corner of the table is sharp. Don't hurt yourself." I subtly moved a little farther away from him. I was afraid that if I got too close, I couldn't help but feel nauseous. When we were saying goodbye, Lin Jingzhou asked me again about the transfer procedures. He seemed quite anxious. I looked at him. Indeed, the game should be over. I no longer had the heart to play this game. The company can be successfully transferred in 3 more days. As soon as Lin Jingzhou heard this, the joy on his face was hard to hide. After he left, my dad called and asked me if I really wanted to give the company to Lin Jingzhou. Although the company would be useless once the end of the world arrived, he didn't want to give it to Lin Jingzhou. He thought it was disgusting. I said slowly, "Of course I won't give it to him. Not only will I not give him the company, but I also want to take back everything he has. When the end of the world comes, and he realizes that he has nothing, his expression will surely be very interesting. I also want to see if he can still love and cherish Su Qingru at that time." 3 days passed quickly. Early in the morning, Lin Jingzhou came to see me. Excitedly behind him were Hitsuefan and Su Qingru. Seeing me looking at Su Qingru, Lin Jingzhou quickly said, "This is my cousin. I brought her to meet her future sister-in-law." Su Qingru also looked at me and smiled, saying, "We meet again. Thanks to you last time, I was able to find my long-lost cousin. Don't blame him. I missed you so much that I came to see you." I secretly sneered. The real reason she came was not to see me, but to witness with her own eyes that I was transferring the company to Lin Jingzhou. I smiled and shook my head, then took out the transfer documents. Lin Jingzhou's eyes seemed to be glued to them. Instantly Lin Jingzhou couldn't wait to sign, but I turned the documents face down on the table. Everyone's expressions tensed up. especially Su Qingru, who wished she could rush up and snatch the documents. Lin Jingzhou gave an awkward laugh and asked, "What's going on?" I tapped the table with my fingernails and pretended to be apologetic, saying, "There's a little problem." "What problem?" Lin Jingzhou quickly asked. "My dad said you don't have enough sincerity, you just want the company and then dump me." After hearing my words, everyone except me exchanged guilty glances. As if they had a tacit understanding, I continued. "My dad said that unless you can give me your house and car in the city, you can't prove that you really love me." Lin Jingzhou's face changed. The house and car were what he had saved up after years of hard work. If he lost these two things, he would have nothing. Lin Jingzhou was very hesitant. I waited for him slowly. Greed is insatiable. I didn't believe that Lin Jingzhou would be willing to give up the company in the end. Before Lin Jingzhou could speak, Su Qingru couldn't hold back anymore. She leaned close to Lin Jingzhou's ear and said coquettishly, "Cousin, once you have the company, you'll have any house you want in the future. If sister-in-law wants it, just give it to her." He Tsuifan also tried to persuade him. Eventually, Lin Jingzhou made up his mind. Watched him sign the transfer commitment for the house and car. And then I handed him the company transfer documents. Lin Jingzhou signed with great excitement. And Su Qingru and He Tsuifan also leaned over. I, on the other hand, called my dad. "Dad, do it." "Do what?" Lin Jingzhou asked me in confusion. "Oh, I just asked my dad to smash your house and car." Lin Jingzhou's face immediately distorted. Anyway, he had already signed the contract and no longer wanted to tolerate. Meihei put his arm around Su Qingru and said triumphantly, "Guan Qiwa, I'll tell you the truth, I will never marry you. The person I want to marry is her." "What are you? You're not even fit to carry my shoes. I've had enough of you for a long time." After Lin Jingzhou finished speaking, Su Qingru in his arms also giggled coquettishly. "Come to think of it, I have to thank you, otherwise I wouldn't have found Jingzhou Gij, and I wouldn't have the good life I have now and in the future." He Tsuifan spat on the ground in disgust and said, "You still want to enter my family? You served me greens before, I'll make sure you eat greens for the rest of your life." I waited quietly for a while until my dad called and told me that everything had been smashed, and that Lin Jingzhou's family wouldn't have a place to stay. Then I stood up. "Lin Jingzhou, you'll regret this." With that, I got up and left. Behind me came Lin Jingzhou's furious voice. "Guan Qiwa, I won't regret it. The company is mine. Let's see what you do in the future. Go beg for food." The zombies have broken out. On the first day of the zombie outbreak, the whole world panicked. There were hardly any people on the street. Even if there were, they were in a hurry. The door of the supermarket was smashed open as soon as an infected person entered. The entire supermarket Feli was lying on the soft sofa, watching the live broadcast on TV. Suddenly, a mutated man pounced fiercely in front of the camera, scaring me out of my wits. The man was still chewing on a piece of meat in his mouth, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets, his whole body turning purple, and his skin already starting to rot. Mom came up and irritably turned off the TV, saying, "Don't watch, it's already happened." Then she threw a stack of books at me and said, "If you're bored, recite ancient poems." I quickly turned on my phone and clicked on Empresses in the Palace, which I had downloaded long ago, and started watching it carefully. Before, I could only watch video explanations online. Now, I can finally watch it in its entirety. Just as I had watched the beginning, there was a rapid knocking on the iron door. My heart immediately hung high. Who was it? My dad picked up a thick iron rod and squatted by the door. I, on the other hand, looked out through the peephole and found that it was actually Lin Jingzhou. He was banging on the door while randomly fumbling for the key to put it into the keyhole. Then I remembered that he had the key to my house. Fortunately, my dad had already changed the lock because we needed to keep an eye on the situation outside at all times. My dad had also installed a listening device on the door. At this moment, through the listening device, I could clearly hear his conversation with Su Qingru and He Tsuifan. Su Qingru looked extremely long bay and asked fearfully, "Did she change the lock? What if we can't open the door? I almost got bitten just now." A fierce look flashed across Lin Jingzhou's face, and he gritted his teeth and said, "If we can't open it, we'll pry it open when I get in. I'll kill her. How dare she play tricks on me?" I couldn't help but sneer. "Pry it open? Even an excavator might not be able to pry this door open." Although this door looked the same as the doors of other commercial houses on the surface. In fact, my dad had put a lot of effort into adding steel bars to it, and this door was just the first barrier. There were also baffles and barbed wire behind the door. Even if the door was broken, they wouldn't be able to get in. Saying that the key couldn't open the door, Lin Jingzhou simply picked up an iron rod nearby and started banging on the door, making a loud noise. What a bad person. My mom cursed at this time. My phone ringy looked and saw that it was Lin Jingzhou calling. After thinking for a while, I still answered. As soon as I answered, Lin Jingzhou's wailing came from the other end. "Chiyu, we're at your doorstep, please take us in." Soon, the phone was snatched away by He Tsuifan, and she also cried with snot and tears, "Chiyu, let us in. It must be tiring for you to be alone. I can do the housework. I promise I'll keep the house spotless and cook for you." I sneered and said, "Do you believe what you're saying yourself?" There was no sound on the other end. Then Lin Jingzhou's fierce voice came through. "You won't take the nice offer, but we'll take the harsh one. Open the door for me quickly. I know you must have food at home. You knew about this a long time ago. If you don't open the door, I'll tell everyone and let them all come and rob." I never expected to be able to keep it a secret. Repairing the door was too much of a commotion. As long as someone had the intention, they would notice something strange. But so what? This was the end of the world. I couldn't save everyone. If you can open the door, then do it. With that, I hung up the phone amidst Lin Jingzhou's roars. After a long time, Lin Jingzhou and the others really couldn't open the door. They kicked the door hard twice, and then left angrily. On the 9th day of the zombie outbreak, communication devices Dongji Tanhuan. There were drones outside relaying messages, asking everyone to stay home as much as possible, and not go out, but this was impossible when the end of the world arrived. The most difficult thing was food. If one just stayed at home without food all the time, starvation was inevitable sooner or later. Every moment, there are people taking risks to go out in search of food, only to be torn to pieces by zombies swarming the streets. Although our house is already quite secure, for the sake of extra caution, my parents and I take turns on duty to ensure that no danger approaches in the middle of the night. While I was on duty, I suddenly heard faint noises coming from the door. My heart tightened. Could it be that Lin Jingzhou had come back again? Or had our house been targeted by someone else? I approached the peephole and took a look, then froze. Standing in front of the door was actually the teenager that Lin Xingyu had a crush on. He was holding a sign, on which was neatly written in marker pen. I live next door. I want to live with you. I still have a lot of food at home, but I don't know how to cook. I haven't had fresh meals for several days. In this apocalypse, it's already good to have something to eat. Yet this teenager was being picky. Besides, in the end of the world scenario, it was extremely dangerous to bring in an outsider. I was about to ignore him when the teenager suddenly flipped the sign over. Another sentence was written on it. It was very short, but it almost made my eyes pop out. Sister-in-law, my brother asked you to take care of me. Only then did I remember making such a joke at that time. I thought I would never meet the teenager again. I never expected that fate could be so wonderful. He who accepts a favor feels obligated. I went back into the room to discuss it with my parents. When my parents heard that the teenager was still a high school student, they sighed. Let him in this end of the world situation. It's not easy for a child. My dad opened the door to let the teenager in. The teenager respectfully greeted my parents, uncle and aunt. Hello, my name is Shen Luoyan. Then he turned to me and smiled. Thank you, sister-in-law. My parents looked at me in unison. I waved my hand, smiling rather awkwardly. Misunderstandings, purely a misunderstanding. In short, Shen Luoyan successfully moved in. At first, we just regarded him as a child who needed a meal. Later, we found that this child was quite capable. As soon as he came, he made a small drone at home, installed a monitoring device in it, and could fly it out to check the situation of the whole city. Surprisingly, he didn't think he was amazing when praised. He remained very calm. Finally, he added, Sister-in-law, my brother is even more powerful. You'll know when he comes to rescue us. I furrowed my brows. Are you sure someone will come to rescue us? Shen Luoyan's little face became serious. Of course, my brother is in the military. The country won't abandon us. Perhaps because of his firm belief, I couldn't help but believe it too. On the 20th day of the zombie outbreak, the temperature dropped sharply. I was woken up by the cold. My mom was covering me with a woolen blanket. She had been thoughtful considering the winter. She had stocked up a lot of woolen blankets and quilts at home. These days are getting more and more difficult. My mom sighed. I hugged my mom tightly and said sullenly, Mom, you and Dad must be well. I was actually very selfish. I didn't want to care about others. I just wanted my parents to live the rest of their lives safely and steadily. My mom patted my head and nodded. When I went to give Shen Luoyan a quilt, I found that he wasn't asleep at all, and looked extremely excited seeing me come. He held up a conical object in his hand. Sister-in-law, I've made something that can briefly paralyze zombies. I looked at the object that Shen Luoyan called an electric cone for a while and asked him, You've developed it, then what? Shen Luoyan fell silent. I knew that he actually wanted to mass-produce this electric cone, and distribute it widely outside. In this way, ordinary people would also have a chance to escape when facing zombies, but this also meant that we would be completely exposed once this electric cone was sent out. There would always be traces left. With traces, we would be targeted. People are creatures that seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. If they knew that we were safe here, they would surely swarm over B. Then, the situation would be difficult to control, and it would be only a matter of time before something happened to us. After a long silence, Do you really believe that the rescue team will come? I asked Shen Luoyan. His eyes were still as firm as ever. Then let's start making it tomorrow. Shen Luoyan suddenly raised his head and looked at me in disbelief. I reached out and touched his head. Having died once, I desired to survive more than anyone, but I understood that one tree does not make a forest. It was impossible for a single person to survive for a long time. I went to discuss this matter with my parents. After hearing me out, my parents heaved a sigh of relief. My mom said, "Your dad and I have always wanted to do something, but you were so worried about us that we didn't dare to bring it up." My dad patted me on the shoulder and said loudly, "What are you afraid of? Can't we humans beat the zombies?" We put our words into action immediately. I reluctantly put aside my beloved empresses in the palace and started huffing and puffing to assemble parts with my mom. After a few days, I had the illusion that I was working in an electronics factory. My dad and Shen Luoyan were in charge of remotely controlling the drones to give away the electric cones to those in need, because we had to consider not exposing our location. The drones made several big detours before dropping the electric cones. Those who received them were excited, shocked, and some even kowtowed on the street. Perhaps my mom considered our hard work. The dishes she cooked these days were particularly sumptuous, such as kung pao chicken, braised pork, stewed eggplant in oil, stir-fried crab roe, stir-fried crab yolk, stir-fried crab clear, mixed vermicelli, mushu vegetables, shredded salted pork, one pot wonder, vegetable stir-fry, and so Oni drooled over them and worked with great enthusiasm. On the 25th day of the zombie outbreak, The first batch of supplies was brought by drones. The originally lifeless urban area came back to life. Humans are very strange creatures as long as they can see a glimmer of hope. It can arouse their strongest will to survive. I was looking out of the window with binoculars, and was surprised to find that many people on the street were wearing thick leather clothes. They covered their entire bodies, and were also wearing iron spiked gloves. It seemed that they were used to defend against zombies. Some bold people were not only not afraid of zombies, but even took the initiative to attack them. In fact, as long as one overcomes the fear and disgust in their heart, zombies are not actually that scary. They are like the village idiot, making whining sounds all day long, but their combat power is very weak. Shin Luoyan had specifically calculated that even an adult woman, who couldn't even unscrew a bottle cap, could make a zombie unable to get up as long as she used the right skills. After all, these things have stiff limbs, and it's very difficult for them to get up once they fall. While I was looking through the binoculars, Shin Luoyan was fiddling with a gadget that looked extremely complicated. According to him, he was trying to establish communication when I put down the binoculars, and was about to continue watching my empresses in the palace. Shin Luoyan excitedly ran up to me. Sister-in-law, I got in touch with my brother. He said he'll be back in a few days. I thought his words were a bit strange. What did this have to do with me? I had repeatedly told him not to call me sister-in-law. It was just a joke at the beginning. I never expected that this kid wouldn't change it every time. Over time, I lost the desire to correct him. Aren't you happy? Shin Luoyan furrowed his brows and asked me. Shook my head. Shin Luoyan then sighed in a mature way and put on an extremely worried look. But my brother has been asking about you. He seems to miss you very much. I was even more worried than him. I had never even met his brother. Why did Shin Luoyan act as if we were old lovers? Although I thought so, I had a dream at night. I dreamed that a tall and thin person was holding my hand and wanted to put a ring on me. When he raised his head, it was actually a zombie's face. I woke up immediately. On the 30th day of the zombie outbreak, the rescue team arrived. The people in the urban area were jubilant and extremely lively. Shin Luoyan's rumored brother, my rumored husband, Shin Jiu, also came in at this moment. He was standing outside my door, patiently waiting for me to open the door. I opened the door. Standing at the door was a tall young man in military camouflage. He looked a lot like Shin Luoyan, but he wasn't as immature as Shin Luoyan. He seemed more composed and gentle. The corners of his lips curved into a smile, and he nodded politely to me. Hello, Miss Guanqiu. My name is Shin Jiu, Shin Luoyan's brother. I stepped aside to let him in. He took off his coat, which was still stained with zombie flesh, and neatly folded it at the door before entering. Shin Luoyan came up to greet him. Shin Jiu looked at him and said, "The zombies outside have been almost cleared. Go back home." Shin Luoyan was very reluctant and looked at me. Sister-in-law's house is extremely nice. I don't want to go back. There's nothing at home. Shin Luoyan had lived here for a month, and my parents regarded him as half a son. Hearing this, my dad immediately said, "Why leave when you're living so well? He's already moved all the food from his home here. It would be so troublesome to move back and forth." Shin Ji then looked at me suddenly. My heart started beating a little faster. I cleared my throat twice. Let him stay. Shin Luoyan cheered happily. Shin Ji thanked me sincerely. Thank you. He was very busy and left soon after. Since the rescue team arrived, the urban area has been gradually coming back to life. Because our community is relatively large and not severely damaged, it has become a temporary shelter base. Those survivors rescued by the rescue team have entered the community due to the insufficient number of rescue team members. Many survivors in the community have become volunteers to assist the rescue team in settling and helping the survivors. My parents couldn't stay idle and joined the volunteers on the same day. They even thought I had nothing to do all day and dragged me in as well. In the end of the world scenario, any bit of warm-hearted help is extremely precious. Many people cried when they saw us, as if they had seen long-lost relatives. The days were busy and fulfilling, but at this time, I saw several people I least expected. Lin Jingzhou, He Tsuifan, and Lin Xingyu. These people were brought in by the rescue team angrily, and then thrown hard on the ground, as if they were some disgusting things. The eyes of the people around all turned to them, looking disheveled and in a sorry state, with surprise in their eyes. In the past, the rescue team had always been polite when bringing people in. No one knew why they were so angry today. Immediately, several volunteers went up to inquire about the situation. As soon as they heard what the rescue team said, their faces also darkened. They ate people, and it was a weak woman when we found them. The woman was just bones left. After saying that, one of the rescue team members even kicked Lin Jingzhou hard. In fact, when I saw that Su Qingru wasn't there, I had already guessed it, but when the truth was presented in front of me, I still felt shocked and disgusted. The end of the world scenario tests people's hearts the most. At first, Lin Jingzhou was so affectionate towards Su Qingru, but in the end, he still ate her alive. The disgusted and condemning gazes of the people around were all directed at them. Lin Jingzhou cried with snot and tears, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing several times to everyone. "We know we were wrong. Please don't drive us away." He Tsuifan howled even louder. "Have pity on me. I'm an old woman. I am suffering like this. If it weren't for the strict order from above that any survivors encountered must be rescued, the rescue team really wouldn't have wanted to save these cannibalistic beasts." The volunteers also loathed this family to prevent them from hurting others. They simply settled them in the most remote corner of the community. They were also given very little food every day anyway. Giving them more would just be a waste of food. Lin Jingzhou and the others dared not show their anger. They tried their best to curry favor with the volunteers every day, but it was useless. One day, the desperate Lin Jingzhou's family came to Methi. Were really in a sorry state. Their clothes were all tattered, and they were emaciated. The way they looked at me with green-eyed greed made me subconsciously take a step back. These people had eaten me alive in the previous life. And in this life, they had eaten Su Qingru. Lin Xingyu took the first step. Her greedy eyes fell on my clean and nice-looking clothes. And then she said, "Sister-in-law, help us. Those damned volunteers are always bullying us." He Tsuifan also seemed to have been severely tormented. She no longer had the arrogant look she used to have. Instead, she almost begged, "Qiyu, you're a good child. I was blind before to think that Su Qingru was good. She can't even compare to your little finger. I've already severely punished Jingzhou. He already knows he was wrong." Lin Jingzhou stood behind them. Hearing this, he said with a pained expression, "Qiyu, it was all my fault before. I shouldn't have been bewitched by Su Qingru and finally abandoned you for the company now. Perhaps this is the retribution from heaven for my wrongdoings." With that, he put on a look of a reformed prodigal. It was a pity that this family didn't become actors. Perhaps seeing that I didn't speak, Lin Jingzhou thought there was hope. He quickly said in a hurry, "Qiyu, give me another chance. I promise I'll treat you well and never let you suffer even the slightest grievance." I thought that by not leaving a way for their family to survive in the end of the world scenario, the hatred from my previous life would be settled. But at this moment, looking at Lin Jingzhou's hypocritical face, the scene of him cutting my flesh alive in my previous life emerged again, stabbing my heart all the time. I still hated them. I didn't want them to have even the slightest bit of comfort. The current life for them was still too easy. "You want food?" When the three of them heard this, a gleam of success appeared in their eyes. He Tsuifan even said, "Are you going home to get it for us? You don't have to do it. We can go by ourselves." Lin Xingyu's eyes were still fixed on my clothes, and she said obsequiously, "Sister-in-law, we can go by ourselves." I looked at their greedy looks and put on a smile. "Sure. As long as you don't regret it later." I led them up the narrow stairway. "I seem to recall that your residence isn't in this building?" Lin Jingzhou inquired suspiciously. "We've relocated. Don't you trust me?" Upon hearing this, Lin Jingzhou promptly donned an obsequious smile. "By no means. I adore you so deeply I'll believe every word you utter." Lin Xingyu chimed in as well. "Sister-in-law, my brother holds you in the highest regard. Incidentally, do you have any clothes? This one I'm wearing doesn't suit me." After suppressing her urge for quite a while, she finally couldn't resist voicing it. I nodded. "You're welcome to take whatever you desire." Lin Xingyu expressed her gratitude forthwith, yet a hint of derision unconsciously flickered in her eyes, as if she were mocking my naivete. When we reached the stairway corner, I pointed to a room. "It's in there. Let me accompany you inside to prevent you from taking the wrong items." He Tsuifan hastily interposed, feigning concern. "You've traversed such a long distance. Your feet must be aching. Take a respite. We'll fetch them ourselves, and assure you we won't take excessive things." Lin Xingyu and Lin Jingzhou nodded in haste. After all this time, their avaricious nature had only intensified. However, this was precisely what I intended. I nodded, and Lin Jingzhou and the others hastened towards the supply warehouse with alacrity. The moment I turned around, I activated the alarm. The grand performance commenced. Supplies were of paramount importance. As soon as the alarm resounded, everyone hastened over. Lin Jingzhou's family, on the other hand, was being escorted out angrily by the guards within, their countenances betraying extreme trepidation. Lin Jingzhou pointed at me and roared, "Release me." I didn't barge in. She permitted me to enter and take whatever I pleased, claiming this was her abode. I feigned extreme affront and retorted indignantly, "Supplies are so crucial. How could I possibly allow you to enter and help yourselves freely?" Subsequently, I addressed the onlookers. I observed them acting furtively and suspiciously just now, so I tailed them. Little did I anticipate that they intended to pilfer supplies. People are predisposed to partiality. This family's act of cannibalism had already rendered everyone profoundly disgusted. Naturally, they opted to believe my account this time. Yesterday, they surreptitiously probed me about the location of the supplies I knew they were planning to steal, and indeed they were. An elderly woman exclaimed angrily, "I deem them to be no good." The instant they entered the warehouse, they rushed to seize things, behaving like brigands. "How could you be so addled as to bring you here to loot? Cease your sophistry and be compliant." One of the guards who had apprehended him delivered an angry kick to Lin Jingzhou. Lin Jingzhou glared at me, his eyes brimming with a murderous intent, as if he could devour me alive. Beholding his countenance, I couldn't help but recall an incident from my previous life. In the final days of that life, Lin Jingzhou's family had exhausted their provisions, yet their neighbors had some. The neighbors were ferocious, and they dared not rob openly, so they cajoled me into believing that it was their other dwelling and urged me to retrieve food. I trusted him implicitly at that time, and went foolishly. Consequently, I was apprehended by the fierce neighbor's family and beaten as a thief. I recounted the reason for my visit to obtain food, and the neighbors dragged me to confront Lin Jingzhou's family. However, Lin Jingzhou adamantly denied it, asserting that I had the intention of thieving on my own accord. He Tsuifan slapped me, branding me as a wicked person. Lin Xingyu insinuated and overtly sneered at me, alleging that I had a thieving disposition, and had pilfered from home previously, and remained unrepentant. I surmised that my eyes at that time must have resembled Lin Jingzhou's at present, filled with hatred. Subsequently, they also voted to consume me on the pretext of my poor moral character. Lin Jingzhou grimaced in pain. I bent down and whispered softly, "The sensation of being wronged is rather unpleasant, isn't it? But you deserve it. Furthermore, I personally introduced Su Qingru to you. I had originally presumed that you could at least safeguard her life. Little did I expect you to be so callous. In the inferno, she must yearn to flay you alive." Lin Jingzhou seemed to be stirred by some agonizing and terrifying recollections, and shuddered uncontrollably. Lin Jingzhou's family was escorted away by the guards. Pilfering supplies was a grave offense. And within the entire community, no one would show leniency to those who attempted to steal their sustenance. Lin Jingzhou's family's future days were bound to be fraught with hardships. On the 200th day of the zombie outbreak, the situation was brought under control. The post-disaster reconstruction work was proceeding steadily and in an orderly manner, and the number of zombies on Earth was dwindling. Lin Jingzhou's family became the pariahs of the community, loathed by all. Everyone who beheld them couldn't refrain from spitting in disdain. Every day of their existence was akin to living in purgatory. I pondered whether, after they had consumed me in my previous life, their days had also been like this. If so, I didn't loathe them as vehemently anymore, for numerous people were exacting revenge on my behalf. They dared not provoke me any longer. Each time they encountered me, they cowered. I had originally assumed that this state of affairs would persist indefinitely, yet unexpectedly, Lin Jingzhou began to pester me once more. One day, while I was taking inventory of supplies, Lin Jingzhou suddenly embraced me tightly from behind. He proclaimed affectionately, "Qiyu, I miss you intensely. Only you are truly kind to me. Regret it. Sincerely regret it." Fearing Lin Jingzhou's harassment, I always carried an electric stun device with me. This contraption could subdue even the obtuse-witted zombies, let alone Lin Jingzhou. I retrieved the electric stun device and struck him with it. Lin Jingzhou immediately emitted a shrill scream, leaped back several meters, and glared at me resentfully. Then, he immediately feigned an air of deep affection. "Qiyu, I truly miss you. I never loved Su Qingru. The one I cherish is you." I sneered. His performance was truly execrable. "You have 3 minutes. Depart promptly, or I won't be lenient." Lin Jingzhou stared for a while. Once he was certain that I harbored a profound aversion to him, he suddenly laughed insolently. "Not lenient? What can you do to me? I have but one life. Can you expel me?" I was so enraged that I nearly dropped the electric stun device. However, Lin Jingzhou was not in the wrong. I was powerless against him. At most, I could administer a beating, but as long as he remained alive, he wouldn't care. In the apocalypse, apart from life and sustenance, other things posed no threat to an individual whatsoever. She can I assure you that if you continue to pester her, the community will definitely not accommodate you. At this juncture, Shun Jiyu's voice suddenly emanated from behind. Mei still carried a travel-worn aura, yet his imposing manner remained undiminished. Lin Jingzhou knew that Shun Jiyu was the captain of the rescue team, and had the authority to expel him. His face instantly paled, and then he bowed obsequiously, wearing a fawning smile. I was jesting. How could I pester her? Shun Jiyu's visage was solemn and cold. "Bear in mind your words." Lin Jingzhou nodded hastily and then scurried away. Hunched over, Shun Jiyu stepped in front of me, and opened his palm. Lying within was a white rabbit creamy candy. He remarked somewhat awkwardly, "I took it from my supplies. I don't partake of this." Half a year had elapsed since the onset of the apocalypse, and food supplies had been depleted. This type of white rabbit creamy candy had become a rarity. It was arduous for ordinary folks even to catch a glimpse of it, let alone consume it. Such a precious item. Yet he claimed not to want it? I accepted the candy, unwrapped the wrapper, placed it in my mouth, and then with eyes half closed smiled and said, "Delicious." Shun Jiyu heaved a sigh of relief just as he was about to speak. A piercing scream suddenly reverberated from upstairs. My mother's voice. Shun Jiyu and I immediately changed countenance and hastened upstairs in great anxiety. Our home had been burglarized. We lived on a relatively low floor prior to the apocalypse. My father had surrounded the windows with iron wire to prevent people from scaling the pipes and entering. However, later, due to the need to allow the drone to enter and exit, a small aperture was made in the wire mesh. The thief had clambered in through this tiny opening. By the time my mother arrived, the thief had already escaped, and the room was in disarray. Such a minuscule opening could only be traversed by a petite girl. Shun Jiyu and I exchanged a glance, and we both knew the answer in our hearts. It was Lin Jingzhou's sister. Lin Xingyu. Lin Jingzhou's sudden pestering of me just now had been rather strange. He was well aware that we had completely fallen out, and there was no chance of my reconciliation with him. His actions just then were more of a stalling tactic than an attempt to court me. This also explained why, as soon as he left, Lin Xingyu had escaped. At this moment, my mother finished inspecting the items in the house, and her face instantly turned deathly pale. She quavered, "Qiyu, it's disastrous. Your father's medicine has vanished." This was like a thunderbolt, leaving me stunned on the spot. My father suffered from chronic hepatitis B, and there were already conspicuous signs of liver cirrhosis. This ailment required continuous antiviral medication to maintain stability. Once the medication was discontinued, the risk of the disease flaring up would be extremely high. My parents had made thorough preparations prior to the advent of the apocalypse, procuring medicine from various hospitals, sufficient for my father to last a lifetime. But who could have imagined that Lin Xingyu would specifically come to steal my father's medicine? I suddenly recollected that I had once confided in Lin Jingzhou about my father's illness, when we were once intimate lovers. Who could have foreseen that now he would be so malevolent as to steal my father's medicine? I immediately whirled around and rushed outside. I had to seek out Lin Jingzhou and the others since they dared to steal. They must have made preparations to flee. Shun Jiyu quickly followed me. However, when we arrived at the place where Lin Jingzhou and the others used to live, there were only the corpses of He Tsuefen and Lin Xingyu. Judging from the wounds on the two, they seemed to have been stabbed to death with a knife. Lin Xingyu's eyes were wide open, and the shock before her death was palpable. Evidently, the one who killed them was Lin Jingzhou. Had Lin Jingzhou gone insane? The medicine was nowhere to be found, nor was Lin Jingzhou. There was only a piece of paper on the table. Guan Qiyue, I told you I'd make you regret it. You forced me to eat Suchingru. So I'll make you watch your father fall ill and die with your own eyes. I nearly collapsed to the ground. Fortunately, Shinjiyu caught me in time. Shinjiyu's face was also extremely somber. They couldn't have gone far. I'll go look for them right away. I accompanied Shinjiyu to search. Lin Jingzhou had gone completely berserk, and I was worried if I didn't go along. Searching for someone was easy to talk about. But in this apocalyptic world, it was extremely arduous. Outside the community, there were dilapidated buildings everywhere, and there was no sign of human habitation. It was difficult enough for the rescue team to search for survivors, let alone someone who was deliberately avoiding them. We searched until nightfall, yet there was still no trace of Lin Jingzhou. Despair filled my heart. Do you recognize that medicine? Shinjiyu asked. Mei nodded hastily. Shinjiyu pondered for a moment and said, then let's drive to the pharmacy now. Surely not all of it has been depleted. I looked at Shinjiyu gratefully. Just as I was about to set off in the car, Shinjiyu suddenly received a communication from his superior. His face gradually darkened, and I had a very ominous premonition. Sure enough, Shinjiyu heaved a sigh. The higher ups say that the last wave of zombie attacks is approaching. The zombies will self-destruct in mass, and the zombie virus will spread through the air. The higher ups have issued a strict order to seal the city and strictly prohibit residents from leaving their homes. My heart plummeted to the bottom. Not being able to leave home meant that I didn't even have a chance to look for the medicine, right? Shinjiyu took me back home. As we approached the door, he said solemnly, as soon as there's an opportunity, I'll immediately go find Lin Jingzhou and get the medicine. I nodded reluctantly. With the last wave of zombie attacks coming, he would surely be swamped with work. How could he have time to look for Lin Jingzhou? After entering the house, my father felt distressed seeing my state. He stroked my head and comforted me. Don't blame yourself. This isn't your fault. I shook my head. I felt it was my fault. If only I had been more vigilant and held my tongue, not telling Lin Jingzhou about my father's illness. If only I had been more ruthless and simply killed Lin Jingzhou. Then he wouldn't have had the chance to survive and come to harm my father again. If only I had been more astute and discovered the loophole in the window earlier. I reproached myself in the living room all night. In the end, I could only console myself. There was only a risk of the illness flaring. As long as I took good care of my father, I was certain to minimize the risk. So after the restriction on going out, I exercised with my father on the treadmill every day to enhance his physical fitness. My mother also went to great lengths to prepare nourishing meals for my father, and my father, to put us at ease, also tried his best to follow our instructions. However, as the period of confinement grew longer, his uncomfortable symptoms became more and more pronounced. Since the communication equipment had basically been restored, my mother asked in various groups, but no one had the medicine. One day, my father fainted. My mother and I frantically carried him to the bed outside. It was a critical period of the spread of the zombie virus, and the rescue team had strictly prohibited anyone from going out. Looking at my father with a pale face lying on the bed, I suddenly felt a profound sense of despair. My only goal after being reborn was to ensure that my parents lived a healthy life. In my previous life, I was extremely unfilial. When the zombie outbreak occurred, I wasn't even by their side. Moreover, I made them worry about me day and night. I had always felt a deep sense of guilt towards them. My father's illness this time became the last straw that broke me. Amidst my mother's sighs, I broke down and wept bitterly. My mother stood there at a loss. After a while, she came to embrace me, and tears silently trickled down her face. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. My mother and I had no inclination to open it. Instead, Shin Luoyan opened the door. Shinjiyu, fully covered in a protective suit, rushed in and then took out the contents of his pocket. I took a look. It was a large bag of antiviral medicine. My mother and I were overjoyed, and immediately fed the medicine and water to my father. After taking the medicine, my father's complexion immediately improved significantly. My mother and I were extremely grateful to Shinjiyu. Shinjiyu's gaze softened, and he waved his hand. It's only natural. Seeing my father getting better, all my depressed feelings vanished. Where did you find the medicine? I asked him. Shinjiyu paused for a moment, and his tone became a bit colder. In his company before the apocalypse, he had already turned into a zombie and was killed by us. Hearing this, my mother's face showed a hint of satisfaction. Good riddance. He won't be able to harm others anymore. I shared the same sentiment as my mother. The spread of the zombie virus has been controlled. It will be Jifeng soon. A rare smile also appeared on Shinjiyu's face. On the 250th day of the zombie virus outbreak, the spread of the zombie virus was contained. The guards in the community were no longer as strict, for everyone saw the dawn of victory. One day, I turned on my phone and suddenly found that I had become a well-known figure in the community group. The reason was my loud wailing that day. On that day, someone in the group asked if someone was crying, showing great concern. Before the lockdown, everyone had engaged in activities together, and their feelings had deepened. However, due to the danger of zombies, the rescue team was worried that someone might have malicious intentions, so they didn't allow everyone to disclose which building and which household they lived in, so no one knew it was me crying. Later, my mother spoke in the group and said that it was me crying. She didn't dare to mention my father's situation, fearing that there might be someone like Lin Jingzhou again. She just said that I was crying because I was hungry. No one was unaware of the pain of starving in the apocalypse. They all started to offer me food. There would always be someone in the group specifically message my mother, saying that their family had made some delicious food again, and asking our family to send a small drone to retrieve it. My mother was an honest person. After receiving something from others, she always had it in mind to reciprocate, so whenever she was free, she would make some snacks at home and then post in the group for everyone to come and take the mover time. Our family received snacks from other families every day. Sometimes it was a few misshapen egg tarts. Sometimes it was a leek box. And there were many things I couldn't name after a while. The people in the community seemed to have unconsciously become a family. 1 second. Someone was shouting in the group that they were out of cooking seasonings. The next second, my mother started to prepare them. Just as she finished packing all the seasonings, she discovered that the person who had just shouted in the group was shouting again. But the content had changed. He shouted, "Stop sending, my house is about to be inundated." The exaggerated words made everyone burst into laughter. On the 300th day of the zombie virus outbreak, the last zombie on Earth was eradicated. All places witnessed a great liberation. The zombie disaster was over. The survivors in our urban area ranked high in the whole country and were repeatedly praised by the leaders after the disaster. What followed was the post-disaster reconstruction work. Shinjiu Anlisoa should have been transferred to a larger place, but he applied to stay. Everyone knew that this was no different from voluntarily giving up his future prospects. However, Shinjiu didn't feel it was a pity. Instead, he looked very relaxed after the disaster. Being able to stay by the side of one's family is the most important thing. I glanced at him. "You can take Shin Luoyan with you." Shinjiu suddenly smiled, and the light in his eyes was warm and dazzling. "You know, I can't possibly just want to take him." My face suddenly turned as red as the setting sun in the sky. The smile in Shinjiu's eyes deepened. He looked at the last ray of the setting sun. The sun has set, but it will always rise again. Just like the journey of humanity, although there will be darkness, there will always be light. I couldn't help but nod. The light will come.